live on Facebook now. Check one. Check. Okay, intro time. Hey guys, it's almost an agreement time. As predicted, Jennifer Owen's in the house with me. And she just asked me what we're going to talk about. As you guys know, I don't know until we do, so that's where we're at right now. But we're Almost in Agreement. You can find us online. You can go to almostinagreement.com, or you can email us at almostinagreement@gmail.com. You can see us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can find us on all major podcast providers. While you're in these places, please like, share, friend, subscribe, retweet, follow. I don't know, whichever version that website or service uses to tell them that you like us, because that really helps us get more exposure to more people and get the word out about different things that are going on that I think a lot of people want to know about but don't have access to learn more about. So that's what I'm trying to do here today. For those of you that haven't early voted yet, city elections are early voting right now. For the primary, go to almostinagreement.com/cityelections21. That's my quick cheat sheet just to give you some general information on who's running, links to KGIS as well as the Election Commission to get your polling stations and stuff like that. So if you want to go to those places and check that out, I'd appreciate it. And Jennifer Owen, what district are you? I forgot.
I'm District 2.
District 2? Bummer. All right, so Jennifer Owen, District 2. I apologize on the YouTube one. I have it listed as District 3. I'll fix that in post. Let me turn this thing so everybody can see you and me and my beautiful bad hair day I'm working with today. Okay, so I don't know. We've chatted a bunch online about a number of different topics, and I guess I don't really want to get into mask arguments per se, but we've got the new dashboard out as far as the COVID tracing kind of going on through the schools and stuff like that. And I guess what I want to start with is what Jennifer, not your Jennifer, Virginia was in here last week and we were talking about it. So some of the state policy that came down that went into place this year concerning sick days, days off, school schedules, and other stuff like that you know of as far as these updates go.
Well, as far as updates go, I don't think we've had any recently.
Okay.
Is there something specific?
Well, one of the ones that I'd seen mentioned, there was questions on whether it was 10 total missing days, 10 parent excuses, and there's 5 doctor notes on top. Because, I guess it's the old policy that's been reinstated because we no longer have COVID exception this year, I guess, right, was what I was trying to clarify for me.
Right. I think it's just back to the old policy. Okay. So that should be, I think it's 5 non-doctor notes in like 5 days in a row. Okay. Is what I think it is, but I would have to go back and check on that.
Okay. Like I said, I'm trying to think of little things offhand, because my big issue right now, I think with the whole, it's not even the COVID mess, but the governor leave mandate mess. As I've argued a lot, I'm not necessarily pro voucher, but I'm pro seeking solutions, because it seems like the current system always has issues, and I'm coming to learn as I'm getting deeper into this, how much control the state actually has over what's going on. Right. And so I'm really unhappy about this mandate that Lee dropped down, because I don't like the idea, especially if you run on the premise of let local handle stuff, except when local doesn't do what I want, and then I'm going to handle it for you. Then it's like, well, that's not your thing. And so for me, like, what do we have? Like, do we have any tools to push back on any of this, or is it just, well, Lee says so and we're stuck?
I think we do. Technically, our schools are state schools. I know we all think of them as county schools, mm-hmm, but they are technically state schools. The way it used to be explained is the schools are owned by the state, and that's, they're not really owned, but they're state schools. And so the local education agents, the board and the district, those are sort of like management for the state. So we have to do what the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education say, and that all has to be within the law. Whether the governor can control that kind of individual issue at the school, I think is open to some questions. Memphis and Nashville already had a mask mandate in place. Mm-hmm. And they're not changing it until they get some really clear guidance.
Right, and I'd heard somewhere on the rumor mill that the state district attorney or the state attorney general, whichever the job title is, kind of insinuated that they would not be pursuing any legal against any of the schools for breaking said mandate.
Right.
Which is, I guess, a bonus for having multiple people in play in this thing. Because again, because for last time we had you here, the big conversation for me was I'm trying to understand funding. I'm still trying to understand funding. I don't know that I've gotten more than 0.5% better at understanding funding, and so it's like it's like, okay, well, they're state schools, the state owns them, and we just kind of do whatever. And it's like, well, then why are we paying more as Knox County residents for what the state school gets?
So the state gives a bare minimum, the
right.
BEP, you know that, the
right.
bare minimum. And then there's so much that each county has to kick in above that bare minimum. And then there are other things that different counties choose to pay for. So all of those things kind of make up that budget piece of it. I think back to the earlier question, talking about the Attorney General, I think it would be much more useful for us if, instead of just saying that he's not going to prosecute, I think it would be more useful if he would give a legal opinion on whether
he can or cannot,
right.
Lee can or cannot do that.
Right.
Because again, saying I'm not going to prosecute doesn't mean, I don't know, that the state education board can't move funding around like they like to do and stuff like that as a punishment, even though they're not prosecuting a school board or anything in particular too. Because I think that's a real question. I think that's, and again, for me, I'm a more local control kind of person. That's how I would prefer it to be. I would like to be able to come to you with issues and that you actually have some authority to fix stuff. Because I think for me, I mean, we've been at this for a year and a half now, and I still can't figure out things that the board actually is allowed to control versus things that the state passes down that the board has to administer, for lack of a better word. So both on the political side of how do I evaluate a candidate on what they want and can and can't do, as well as who am I supposed to jump down and yell at when, maybe not yell, that's not the best word, who am I supposed to communicate with when I have an issue that I think needs addressing, because I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know, should I be on Manis and Massey right now because those are my state rep and state senators because this is a state level issue, or should I be getting on specifically Bab because she's my rep for the school board? I don't know. And I think that's one of the major problems. And again, this is a broader philosophical issue that I have with a number of parts and pieces in the system as a whole. It's the same with the commission, the city council for that matter. But that is one of the become the most frustrating things to me, is trying to understand who does what. And
I think part of our responsibility, one way that a board job has been described as sort of that liaison between the community and the district, but also as sort of a check and balance between them so that the community knows what's going on. I think always start at whatever the lowest level is,
right?
Just like anything else, any other complaint,
right.
I should say.
And I think
start
Larson,
with whoever's closest.
Right, Larson and commission when he was on here, I probably put it best as 90% of the job is I'm a switchboard operator. I'm directing people to the right person, and for functional day-to-day issues, that makes sense to me. But again, and we don't need to go down this path deeply, but for the political side of it, the actual I'm running for said office. Who do I ask if, let's say, are you up for 22?
I'm not.
Okay. So you're fine. We don't have to talk about
we
your
can talk about anything.
Well, no, not even that, but, I'm trying really hard to leave 22 election stuff out of conversation right now until we get through 21 city stuff, even though I'm not a city resident. But and I'm not saying you have in the past or anything like that, but let's say you're going out and you're stumping for your campaign and I'm really liking what you have to say or whatever like that. Who is out there that's going to correct whether or not you are saying things that are within the job? Because in my opinion, at least, the local media sucks at it. I don't see them doing that. I've in the short time that I've dove in Knox County education, everybody.
I think it's dived.
Dived? It sounds
you
wrong.
Dove.
It sounds wrong every way.
It does, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. So English is not my first or my best thing. So but as
Dove
far as
in.
I've jumped well into the deep end in this political governmental game, I still don't. That's the part that I think's truly missing for constituents. It's taken me a year and a half to get this far, and I still don't know anything. So let's go now. Let's go talk to my neighbor, like Chris Davis, 27. Chris, I know you're counting. Chris Davis said here, he's like, I would argue that you could go out and just randomly poll people on the street, and they don't know what district they live in. They don't know who their direct rep is, whether it's city or county or which ones, and stuff like that. And it's like that I can swallow in the sense that they're all our reps anyway. When you see something going on at the school board or you see something going on in county commission, I can get behind the idea of like, well, they're all the same body of thing. But at least knowing what their job is, I think, is the main thing missing. Is we don't know as a constituency what the job is of anybody. Right. And school board included, because I'm still trying to figure out like different parts and pieces. Especially, this is a good example to me. It's I guess it didn't matter at the end of the day. I don't know. I'm still confused about that last meeting. Because I think we were like a week ahead of the mandate anyway, and it kind of came out to the same result. So it didn't really matter to us, the governor leave mandate, as far as the specifics of it. But again, like, it's just, I don't know. That it's such a weird issue to me that it's so normalized. I think on top of that, it's weird by itself, and then it's just like, well, it's just
weird that we don't know what the bodies do.
Right. And I think it's weird. Well, yeah.
I think one reason school board is confusing for people is because when you talk about going to the Board of Education, a lot of times what they see that is people think that's the administrative offices.
Right.
Like people say, I've called the Board of Education, and I look at them like, no, you haven't. they've called somebody downtown.
Right.
But they've not called the board office or their board member. And so it takes a little while to get through to people that the Board of Education is the elected body that is managing, but the day-to-day management is separate in
right. Okay, so
how that functions.
Okay, so that brings up a question I've had in the past that is not particularly highly important right now, but the board hires Bob Thomas.
Right.
And then who else does the board hire, and then how much does Bob and down that hierarchy go before it's under his control?
Technically, the board doesn't hire anybody else. Well, I say technically, but technically, yes, they do. It's weird. How about that? It's complicated.
No way. That doesn't sound normal.
The only person we actually interview and choose is the superintendent. Let's say it that way, instead of hire. We interview and choose the superintendent. Well, then the superintendent and his staff interview and choose teachers.
Right.
Well, then the board has to officially hire. So we like approve their when they reach tenure status. The board approves that, even though we don't choose them.
Right.
They're chosen by the administration.
Right.
So it's sort of it's a technical piece there. So we're not actually hiring those people, even though they are employees.
Does the superintendent need state and or county government approval, or is it just in like you guys chose Bob Thomas?
Right, just us.
And then that's that. And then there's stuff down the hill from that you have to approve his decisions on. And so you're kind of the backstop against him going crazy.
Right.
Okay. Because again, that was one of the things that confused me about the last meeting, is that it's, the big question was, well, this is what confused me about all the movies, because the actual question at hand versus how the public forum addresses the question at hand are never necessarily the same thing. But the question at hand was whether Bob should have the authority to adjust the health and safety standards within the school district without board approval. That was the actual agenda item, give or take.
Yes, we had already approved in April that the district would follow the recommendations of the state health department.
Okay.
And of course, the state health department says follow CDC recommendations. So we had already approved that. Well, then when the governor ended his executive orders for
the state of emergency and stuff.
Yes, the state of emergency. Then there's some confusion over whether that ends our ability to impose masks also. And so that agenda item last time was basically the same thing we approved in April, except it specified face masks.
Okay. So because again, like, this is one of the issues, and again, I would not to toot my own horn by any means, but I would argue that I'm probably deeper into most of these things than the average person in town, and I still couldn't figure that out. This was that was the explanation I needed, because again, it was because I was one of the complaints that I heard from a lot of the public forum people. It's like, we already established this back in April. Why aren't we doing what we said? That was Watson's thing. He's like, well, we said we were going to do this.
Yes.
Why are we now talking about not doing this and stuff like that? And it's like, okay, see, I didn't because I was really confused. Like his argument makes less sense now because it's actually a gap fill that we were trying to do instead of it being an adjustment of an old issue.
Well, yes, it was both. I think when a board votes for something, the administration is supposed to follow that vote. Well, then if the administration does not follow that vote, the only body that can come back and do anything about that is that board. So if that board chooses not to do anything about it, then
right.
Then that's an issue too. That's a whole different issue,
right.
And that's an issue for the voters in the community.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So what we did, the vote we took in April, that's still there. Nothing has changed that one, but it didn't specify face masks, and so
right. And the April one was only effective because we were still under the state of emergency.
No, the April one's good no matter what, except for face masks.
Okay.
See, that wasn't specific in there. The April one was to follow the health department guidelines. So when the state of emergency ended, that ended the face mask piece.
Okay.
Or that's the legal opinion, is that it ended the face mask piece. I think that's still much debated.
As far as having the emergency authority to require them.
Right.
Okay.
And so it was the legal opinion that the board could create a policy. Well, the issue with creating a policy is once we create a policy, that policy can't be changed unless it's a meeting time.
Right.
So if situations are changing quickly, let's say it's a snow day.
Right.
The board can't meet and vote every time there's a snow day.
I mean, you could if you had virtual school.
Well, we could.
Bad jokes, people. These are the jokes.
So the administration needs to have the ability to make that decision. And so that the motion that Mr. Watson brought last time just gave the administration the authority to institute face masks whenever needed.
Okay. And then Governor Lee came down with his stupid opt-out program, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's... I might be more confused, but I think I get it. Okay, so... what was the other one I was thinking about earlier?
So that April vote that says follow the CDC guidelines and the state guidelines, that's still good. The only piece that's funny in there is the mask part.
Gotcha. Okay, so one of the questions that came up and that I saw on the group, and I don't know whether you've been advised on this one or not, was as far as we talked about, like the 10-5 day. We're not sure what that is exactly. Yeah, but there's question on are we back into like last year's contact tracing, where if my student in his classroom, maybe not my student, another student in my kid's classroom, test positive or whatever, the whole school is going to get the email that says we found a case at the school, but then I'm going to get a separate phone call from the health department saying that we were directly exposed, or where are we at on that thing?
Last year, our Knox County Schools nursing staff was involved in contact tracing.
Okay.
This year, it is only through the health department. So when that happens depends on...
Right, if I take Junior down to the ER and get a test, that's going to be automatically... That data goes to the health department that there was a test.
Right.
Okay.
And then that information would have to come back to the school system and get to the principal before that letter could go out to parents. But specifically for contact tracing, the schools are not doing that. It's all the health department.
So it's going to be somebody in the school has it. We don't know which classroom. We may or may not know which classroom, but that's not on the data that we're going to be sharing with parents this year.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's unfortunate.
I mean, I don't know. I got like I'm as least qualified a scientist as I can possibly imagine, and I try to follow it. And I'd have to look it up again. It was either New York Magazine or something like that had an article about a guy that was looking into comparable, I think he's called it peer nations, stuff that's going on around the world, other similar demographic countries that have the same kind of median incomes, kind of stuff like that, and the comparable to how many kids got COVID last year to what we had last year with or without masks. Some countries didn't do it, stuff like that. So it's just an added to the pile of I don't understand what's going on.
Right. I think a valid comparison would be this year and last year just in our own county, because we can see that the numbers are climbing exponentially now, and we didn't see that last year. But there are multiple factors to take into account. We've taken away the distancing. We've put more people in the schools. We've put more people close together. We've put larger groups together. We've taken out masks. We've taken out contact tracing. So all those pieces are suddenly gone. I don't think we can pin it on any one thing.
Right, and with the new absences and total snow days, it's punitive to try to shut down to protect from it for either the individual student and or the school. We can't close a school anymore. It has to be the whole district and that whole debacle. And I don't know. Like again, like I said, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on any of it, but like last year was functional, I guess, but I can't imagine doing last year again as the solution.
Right.
And so like this scenario for all bodies involved has been a lose-lose. I mean, there's no winning here. And I get that, but I don't know. Like it's one of those. As with many things, there is the status quo, and then the one unified alternative that's allowed to be talked about. And so this time around, it's or it was last year. The status quo was just normal school, and then the one alternative to be talked about was the virtual combo that we did, which again we got through it. Has there been any conversation, maybe behind closed doors, or in kind of a bit broader conversations about other options that we could try to move forward with, or is it there's too many moving pieces, we got to put it where it is and we got to go?
I think the state has kind of taken away those other options.
Okay.
Because without a state of emergency in place, our ability to move back and forth to virtual learning for the district is not there. We can provide some asynchronous work for students who are out, but that's definitely not the same as providing a virtual program that an entire school could move in and out of.
So are we in a position to, if Governor Lee changes his mind again and throws us back into a state of emergency, or there is some significant undeniable change situation where we can shift back into the old model fairly smoothly, or is it now again same kind of idea, the behemoth is rolling and there's no change, it's really hard to change direction?
I think fairly smoothly depends on your definition of fairly smoothly.
Well, smoothly is easy, but the fairly is where it gets complicated.
I'm going to have to just totally guess here. So let's just put that out there. I'm totally guessing.
It's not an election year. Don't worry about it. Go crazy.
I'm totally guessing. I would guess that if a whole school needed to move to virtual, that would be a fairly smooth process. But as far as having large groups of students from all different places doing that would not be a smooth process. So there wouldn't be options for certain courses because we don't have those additional teachers.
Right. Okay. I get what you're saying. All right. So that brings me to a much less topical as far as right now thing that I was thinking about earlier. At what point do teachers start to get more specified to a program? I don't remember my schooling well enough to remember when it went from, like
changing classes.
Right. Like my youngest is in 3rd grade, and so he now has 2 teachers, and they kind of split up. One's English, ELA, and social studies. The other one's doing math and science. But at the end of the day, both those teachers could do all 4 of those subjects functionally. And so I guess, again, this is our far aloof, completely random conversation on alternatives of the way we're used to doing school. Because that's one of the things that I'm approaching, is that I don't like the model. I don't know that the model is fully functional and effective for what we think the goal is supposed to be for school. And I think that's one of those things that we all have a problem defining as well. Like, what is a kid that graduates from a Tennessee school supposed to be? What are they supposed to be capable of? Those kind of things. And so I was thinking about it earlier today, and it's like, well, I'm trying to remember when, it was like not just a math teacher, but this was like algebra teacher. And they had that was part of their resume, for lack of a better word, is the specificity of what they're going to teach. When does that start kicking in to the best of your knowledge?
The specificity with licensing, generally, well, there's several different pieces of that specificity. As far as course by course, it's generally like 7 through 12.
Okay.
But there's also a middle grades certification that is specific to, I believe it's grades 5 through 8. So there's some additional knowledge as far as how to teach students in this age group,
Right.
that some folks have.
But it's particular to the age group and not the subject, or both?
Both.
Okay.
And then, but if we're looking just at curriculum and that content,
Right.
that's generally 7 through 12.
Okay, so late or middle school, halfway through,
Yeah.
essentially. Okay. Because again, like one of the thoughts I had, and I don't know if it exists, you might know and I don't, is doing what I guess the term I've come up with is a more linear school system, where instead of it being you change, like every year you change teachers, you change classrooms, you change peer groups and all that kind of stuff, going more linear, where it's like, we have a K-4 or something like that, but it kind of stays fairly constant as far as the specifically the teacher would be my thought process on it, because that teacher would be able to know the kids better, be able to adjust to a particular kid's need and stuff like that. I don't know. That's one of the things that with some of the ESSER stuff, which we can talk about here in a second, because for me in my household, it's very specific. One of my kids has a significant had significant learning loss in a specific particular subject, which is why, as far as I can understand the ESSER stuff so far, I like what we're trying to do, because I think it's important to specify particular kids and the issues those kids need to get caught up, instead of it being, well, let's just do 2 more hours a day or whatever it is of anything, and that's gonna that's not gonna help a particular kid with a particular thing. So that's kind of the thought process I'm thinking on as far as are you aware of any system near that? Am I just making stuff up?
No, you're not making stuff up. There are some teachers in different districts who have done what they call spiraling up with the students.
Uh-huh.
So maybe a teacher has this class in 2nd grade, and that teacher goes to 3rd grade with that same class.
Okay.
So that goes on. My nephew did that. I think his was 3rd grade to 4th grade, if I remember right. So that happens from time to time. It really depends a lot on the school and the teacher and the students, and whether there's interest in doing that.
Is that a design function of a district, or is that something that just a particular principal could play with? Or
I think an individual principal can play with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, I like I said, I'm trying to get a better grasp of understanding what it is, so that I can then make stuff up and see if I can make up a better idea. Which, not that I have any expertise and knowledge of, but I've just, again, that's just me normally. Like, I look at what's in front of us. I think there's a general agreement that there are problems with what we're doing, and so then I try to figure out bad solutions, because I'm not guaranteeing any good stuff.
I think what you're getting at is what teachers see a lot, is that students are not necessarily ready to do this piece of work on this day, even though we expect them to. And when legislators are talking about learning loss,
Right.
what we have to remember is that definition of what a student is supposed to know by this date is based on them having this number of days of learning prior to that.
Right.
And when we didn't have that number of days, that's not a learning issue. That's a different a point
Right.
that
It's
should
just
move with them.
Right. It's I'm ttrying to think of a better wording there, because I agree with you. Like, the learning loss is like they missed. Right. I mean, I guess they missed stuff, but it's just it's lost time. It's not that they lost learning; they lost time to learn.
Right.
To be where it's at.
It's
and
not
again,
a student loss. It's I think a better definition would be the.
Say it.
Well, I can't really think of a word
Oh,
for it.
okay.
It's the inability of the powers that be, the inability of the legislators to be willing to admit that students are not cookie cutters.
Right.
It's
the inflexibility of the system built.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if a student is supposed to be at X point on X day, well, you've changed the number of days. That's not a failure of the student.
Well, and even if they had the right number of days, it's not the student's fault that they have a different method than X, Y, or Z to not get to A, B. And again, I think that's why the spiral thing makes sense to me. I've never heard the term before, did I? But the idea that, I don't know, I guess there's this idea of, like, you have kids, whether it's through the influence of their parents and their peer groups or whatever, that they can get further along faster than other kids. And so those kids are getting bored doing stuff that's easy to them because they're still third grade age or whatever, while there's kids that are struggling to stay up there. And who's winning out of this situation?
And that's happening for different kids all at different places.
Right, exactly. And so I think that's one of the things that why I don't know. Again, I don't know what a solution is, but I think that's one of the issues that I don't hear talked about enough. I've heard it talked about, but again, I think you're spot on. The inflexibility of the system, especially since it has to come from state level, because when Bab was here, we were talking about it. It's like, what value does it have to us as a grand society, even as just in the state of Tennessee? What value is it that a Knox County grad has a 3.7, a Shelby County grad has a 3.7, and a Roane County grad has a 3.7? What does that mean to me, and what value is that to them? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say that as a employer, a Roane County 3.7 and a Knox County 3.7 don't mean the same thing. Not to me as an employer. They may be mean the same thing to the state, but at the end of the day, to an employer, I'm going to at least have the prejudice that Knox County is a better school system than Roane County.
I think that would be unfair, because
you might be right.
You're looking at teachers who have the same qualifications.
Right. I'm not saying it's a justified reason for it. I'm just saying I think that's a reality. Right. I think that's how and again, to say it poorly and probably get myself in a little bit of trouble, but you take
let's not name names. I think what you're going to say is looking at two different schools.
Right.
You might think that too, and
again, I'm not saying it's an accurate assessment, but I think there's a reality of that is in the zeitgeist, for lack of a better word. That's how people think.
I think that bias for the hiring people,
right,
I don't think that's going to change. I don't think there's anything that the district is going to be able to do to change that, because that's a bias that's outside of the capabilities. But if all the teachers have the same qualifications and all of the curriculum requirements are the same, and every student has to have these things to graduate, and they have to show proficiency in those areas, I think at that point, the hiring manager has to be able to look at that individual and that move on to the interview process from there. Because I think you have to sort of assume that if you're looking at people with the exact same grades, that they are fairly comparable. And then the interview process would be the separator after that. Because you're not going to hire somebody just based on their grades. You're not going to say, this one had a
You're going to not hire somebody based on their grades, but you might
This one has a 3.9 and this one has a 3.8. I don't want to even interview the 3.8. You're going to go ahead and interview them both, and maybe the 3.8 is way better.
You could have like the 2.85 that I got from UT, and then you never get jobs. So that was a really bad. I tried to get in. It was a really dumb freshman year that took me my entire college career to catch up from, just to graduate.
Yeah, and sometimes you can explain that really well in an interview if the hiring manager's willing to look at all the candidates
to get you past that. Okay, I mean, again, but I don't know, because that's where I get confused, is because we just fairly clearly and comfortably got to the idea that kids learn at different levels, at different paces, in different ways. But somehow the finish line's all the same.
I think part of the issue here is that it's not just the finish line that's the same. What everybody keeps coming back to is that one point in time, that one test on that one day that determines whether students have made progress. And, I mean, we all know you can have a really horrible day and not do well. Or you could have a really great day and do really great. And that one point in time is really a poor way to judge what students are able to do. When you're looking at all those different pieces of things that they're learning in every class, having just that one little snapshot, it tells you almost nothing. But that's what we're basing everything on. That's what we're basing all these decisions on. That's what we're basing the whole idea of learning loss on. We have to realize that individuals created these points in time of where students are supposed to be, and individuals could move those points.
Right, and again, I think it goes back to kids aren't widgets.
Yeah.
You know, they're not just stamped out pieces of steel that we can repeat on every single kid and the same results are going to come out the other side. Because again, I think it's a foundational issue. I think that's one of the things is this is how, as far as when we got to a nationalized school system, it's always been, I think, is it the Austrian model? Is that the right phrasing?
I'm not sure.
I think it's the Austrian model that does it treats students as factory pieces. You know, it's just whatever the widget is. They're at this group. This is what we teach them, and with 200 days of schooling, they will come out on the other side with this, and then we'll start here on the next year, and so on and so on and so on. Like every kid's the same, which we agree is not. But again, that's one of my issues.
I think
that kind of thing.
That gives us a different thing to look at. There's education, and then there's training. If you're being educated, you're learning how to do something, how to think about something, how to use that, whatever it is, how to use that curriculum. If you're being trained, you're being told, here's what you do and how to do it. Do. So there's a very different thing there. And for children, that learning process is the important part. Once you get older, adults are more often trained. Here's the thing you need to know how to do, and here's how you do it.
Pull the lever, stamp the thing, move the pile.
Often we have adults in positions of power who are making laws about schools, and they are looking at training and trying to impose that on education. And that's a really warped way to do it.
Right, and I think that goes back to the point earlier of I don't think that there is a kind of unified, realistic, even it doesn't have to be an exact, but at least this is what we want out of students. This is what we want them to become. Because again, like to me, I think the best evaluation of a school system is graduation year plus 5, plus 10, plus 15. Like, did they go to secondary learning? Did they go get a college degree? And how many Knox County kids are turning into doctors, lawyers, the high dollar professions? Because really, when it comes down to it, it's an economics conversation. We want smarter kids out of school so they can get higher paying jobs, so they can buy more crap and pay more taxes. That's the point, to me. Maybe I'm missing a little bit, but I think that's part of the tool of what schools are supposed to be. It's supposed to get a more affluent tax base, which helps raise money for the tax system, which goes back into the schools and brings another generation of stuff. You're giving me a look right now like I'm crazy. I think I'm spot on.
Well, if you're only looking at the big money things, then where do the arts fall into that? Where do sports fall into that?
And I was a bit, sports get into, like, biggest problem sports is having right now is high school kids are quitting early so they can go to college and get paid. But I agree. And I was, and for all of the, I'm a band dork. I was banned from middle school all the way until graduation. I met Mr. Stephen Michael Rogers at UT. We played in the UT's band together, so I can answer his petty flaw question. And I can at least testify to the fact that he is an expert more than I am at percussion by leaps and bounds. He actually ruined percussion for me, but not in a bad way. I still love him for it. I think the arts are important. I think there is a success rate in there, and I think again, I didn't mean to imply that it was only dollars and cents, but I think there's, because again, like, how do we evaluate happiness on a scale of 1 to 10? Because I don't make a ton of money right now with my day job and what I do. This is the most fun thing I do and makes me the least amount of money, but I enjoy it. And so if you ask me like things I learned in school, well, I don't know. I'll get in trouble on the speaker for this, but I think it's the things I didn't learn in school which makes this really fun, because I'm going back and learning things that I think I should have learned in school. Should have learned like what the school board is and does. Should have learned a little bit better about how the county commission works and stuff like that. Like just civics in general. Like I think I missed out. Maybe I missed it because I might have been between when I was in Wisconsin and down here, and it didn't translate well. But I don't think I missed it.
I think there are a lot of things that you learn in school that you don't know you learned in school.
Right.
And a lot of things that probably people, I'm going to say our age, but that's not accurate because my age is quite different. Because you're way younger than I am. I know I'm not. And it started changing, I guess probably 20 years ago. We did much more socialization when we were in school.
Right.
We had much more time to sit and talk with our friends. We had much more time to learn about our classmates. We had a lot more time to play. we had a lot more time to learn how to get along with groups of people or with individual people. And that's something that students are not experiencing anymore because of that training model of just cram all the information in. And so I think a lot of the things that we learned in school, we don't think about having learned in school.
I guess that begs the question: was there an intent that by design to have those things in place? And what then if there was that intent, then what changed that? Like, when did it change to this? We just need this. We need these 5 more minutes a day to get this one more factoid in your head.
Yes. I think the intent was there because in kindergarten, we had the little kitchens and we had the little stations where you could count beans and all these little things we could do. And all of those were part of different kinds of learning. We learned how to use scissors. We learned how to do all of those things. And over time, more and more has been taken out. And it's exactly what you said, to cram in that one more piece of information. There are actually suggestions for teachers to take math flashcards with them so that when kids are in line to go to the bathroom, they can be doing math flashcards. There's not a down second where they can just...
So the goal is to make school suck.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it comes straight from the state. It's everything they take away, they keep pushing in more and more reading, more and more math to get those scores up. But the scores aren't going up because they're not doing anything else.
Right. And even with my disgustingly capitalist model of what the point of school is, this doesn't seem to serve that end.
It doesn't.
And what other... Okay, so then...
And see, here's the thing. In that capitalist model, let's hold on to that capitalist model for a minute. You want everybody to do really well.
Right.
Well, the thing that is gauging whether they're doing really well is that invalid test that's only gauging those very few things. And it's not looking at, does this person get along with other people?
Right. Well, so it's right. Like, I mean, I don't know. I would hope with at least the general narrative at play that my ridiculously capitalistic model would be the point. And again, I don't think it's serving that end if that is the end that the state's trying to go for. And so again, I guess I beg the question, and I've asked it a bunch of times, a bunch of different ways. What are we trying to do here? Like, what is the actual goal? Because it's still, I think that's why the Austrian model stuck, is because it makes good workers.
Yeah.
And we just want drones to plug into the machine. They don't want them to pay attention to what's going on around them. We don't want them to critically think about whether the police officer spying on them is a good thing or not. That's an ACLU thing. Anyway.
And that's exactly when we look at the people who are trying to privatize public schools and who are pushing the agenda of more testing and more rigor, which is the word I hate. The folks who are pushing that agenda are generally big business. And so what they want those worker drones. They want us turning out people who are ready to work for them, ready to work in their factories, ready to do that. But that's turning out good citizens.
But even if, regardless of the good citizen side or not, that's not what we do as a country anymore anyway.
Yeah.
Like, how many factories do we have left?
Exactly.
So, okay, let's churn out...
They don't want us to think. They don't want... I mean,
But if I say, like, even... it doesn't even make sense if I'm the big business. It's like, let's churn out 20 more million little worker bees to work in my factory. I have one factory that I haven't shipped to China at this point. Am I going to start shipping the worker bees to China? No, because they're cheaper over there.
There are companies that actually have done that.
Oh, gross.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've actually shipped their employees with their company.
I mean, I guess it's better than getting laid off.
So
depending on where you're going.
Lots of interesting things there, but it does seem to be that...
All right, I'm going to put you... Okay, go ahead, finish the sentence.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that it seems to be that the goal is really a class division, that this group of students should be doing this training work, and then another echelon of students should be doing the thinking. And that's a really terrible model to get into.
I think there's a point where that should logically get into play. I think that's the German model that my friend Sam that does the big show with me, we had a German exchange student. He went over there and visited. And I think it's in like 12th grade. That's when they start subdividing, not 12th grade, like ninth grade. So they start subdividing directionally, like what you're going to do past this.
Yeah, but that's very different from doing it all the way along.
Right. It's from doing it all the way along, as well as it really matters who's making the decision on which journey you get to go down.
Right.
Because I think that's the problem. So now I'm going to put you into way early campaign mode.
Uh-oh.
What do we do? Like, how do we push? How do we put? Like, because I would hope that I'm not the only person, and that we are not the only people around Knox County that have a problem with this. Because I know, at least on the finance side of it, because that's the part I have a little bit better understanding of it. Like, I would argue to try to figure out how to just get the state out. Just be like, you know what? Mind your business. Give us the money you owe us, and we'll take care of our own business.
I think we can't get the state out because they're state schools, but I think we can definitely. Parents can push back against that idea that one-time test defines their students' learning. They can push back against taking all these things out of schools. If their students are seeing more and more and more just basic curriculum, and they're seeing fewer arts and fewer time to go to PE and less time in the library, if they're seeing that kind of thing, they need to push back against that. We need to get rid of the narrative that learning loss is a thing, and look at the fact that test is flawed and ridiculous. And I think we have to, for me, I have to be honest and tell people that, because people don't know, just like you've said. And if our school board isn't telling people that, people don't know.
Okay, let me interrupt with a question. This is not meant to be insulting at all. How many votes did you get when you won your seat?
I don't remember.
Okay, I can look it up. It just got to, because again, like, you know, at me as a parent who didn't pay a lot of attention prior to the last couple of years.
I want to say 6,000, but I don't know that that's accurate.
I mean, even that. So what's District 4? No, District 2?
Yes.
I mean,
it's a small percentage of those people who are actually qualified to vote.
Right. I was trying to do the math in my head, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. I mean, so if it's 6, there's 9 school boards, right?
But the thing is, we can't look at just voters.
Right.
Because our job isn't to cater to voters, even though a lot of people seem to think that's what we're supposed to do. Our job is to work with the entire community. Because there are a lot of people out there who are not voters. We need to be educating everybody on what's going on.
Right, but I would say that election numbers reflect how involved and interactive and paid attention are. I would say, you know, it's a small percentage. And yes, I agree that you could bump the percentage point up a couple because of the people who don't vote or whatever that are involved, even though they're not a voting part of the populace. And I don't know. Like, this is what frustrates me about the whole thing. I'm not supposed to be good at media. I didn't go to school for media. I'm not here to teach the public on the way the world works, but I don't hear it anywhere else. I don't see it anywhere else. I don't, I don't see, like, again, just the general premise of everybody wants good schools. Nobody knows what that phrase means. Nobody has a definition to what that phrase means, I guess is a better way to put it. Nobody, like, yeah, I want good schools. I want better schools. It's like, we had 3rd grade orientation night or whatever last night for my youngest, and we go in there, we have our PTO who goes there and talks a little bit and tells us different PTO activities, volunteer, gives us your time to help us do whatever for the school. And then we have Great Harvest, which is our big annual fundraiser. I didn't realize this, and my oldest is in 5th grade. This is how little I paid attention. Our great harvest averages like $125,000 to $130,000 a year it brings in for the school.
That's huge.
And I don't know. We have 7 trailers that sit out back. We don't have a big enough school to actually seat our whole student body. It's like, so this is a better one, and it's a better involved community that is pitching in directly. And I know there's some balancing measures that the school board does and stuff like that, and I have no issues with that. But this is a better one, and it takes, I think we have 700 and something kids at that school. It takes $150,000 direct from parents to get it to what I would say is like, it's okay. Like, it's not a great building. It's not bad, but it's not like a great, beautiful building. It's not amazing. It doesn't have enough room for all the kids. There's always something.
Right, but the money that you're raising isn't going directly into the building. That's separate. That's county money that's going into the building.
Right. I mean, there's other stuff. I mean, yeah, it's always like weird. Like, we're doing a sign this year, which is stupid. I mean, I need to get on the PTO just so I can be like, you guys are stupid. Why do we need a digital sign at an elementary school?
I think a lot of people are moving there to digital signage.
Yeah.
To keep the community informed of different things.
I suppose. It's those big weird yard signs that everybody's been doing since the pandemic kicked in. That's the fun one. They look cool at least. I don't know. I ranted and raved. Is there anything I missed that you want to talk about while we get the time?
Oh gosh.
Put you on the spot.
I hadn't even thought about it. I think just really realizing that the narrative that's coming down about learning loss is just bullshit. That's just
How dare you cuss on my show? Good gravy. This is a family friendly. It's supposed to. No, it's not. I don't care. All my episodes are explicit, whether I cuss in them or not, because I'm too lazy to change it. So, but I think we as a community need to have a real conversation about what we expect our schools to be and produce.
I don't think you're going to find any consensus. Well, you might find consensus. I don't think you're going to find agreement because everybody has such diverse ideas.
I would agree with that, but more importantly, I think one premise that I don't know how the legal fix is on it, but I think the idea that a Manus or Massey, those are mine, that's why I always use them, have any time, energy, specific knowledge on, to have any input on specifically what's going on in our school system, let alone statewide school system stuff, inside the purview of their job, which is a part-time job on top of their whatever their regular thing is they actually do to pay the bills, because they get paid next to nothing for doing that. I think that's it's completely logical to say those people don't know what the fuck they're doing. So let's keep it with the people here that know, both here, that are neighbors and that know our kids and our parents and our teachers and our students and all that kind of stuff, as well as people that know what they're actually doing on said topic. Yeah. And let's leave the politics of Nashville out of this conversation. And how do we get there? That's my goal in this. Because I think that's the problem. Because again, I agree with your assessment of my 3.7 Roane County, Knox County thing shouldn't theoretically make a difference to a hiring manager, but I don't know that I see the value in pushing that method that hard, that it needs to be something that they're doing in Nashville to ensure that that's an exact replica. Because again, there's a whole litany of different directions that a Roane County student might be going into because of their lifestyle, their home life, their friends and neighbors, the work their parents do and stuff like that, versus a larger metro kid that lives in a bigger city. And so I think it's a disservice to one or both kids to make them the same, right, because of where they are. Because that Roane County kid might be into the agriculture stuff and might want to go there and has very little access to that in his school because it's not part of the approved greater curriculum and blah 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 of the state.
Well, I think that comes all the way back around to where we started with
Governor Lee, get out. Not of your office, so that's a separate conversation, but just out of this business.
Right, allowing local control. There's so many things that the legislature votes on that are very, very static. They put everything, here's the box that we want everything to be in. And they don't allow enough leeway for districts to do what they really need to do. And I think that's a place is really looking at giving more local control to those boards and allowing those boards to do what they need to do for kids.
Right. And again, to protect my capitalist and myself real quick, as a boss, what I do with my employees, my last question, every time I'm in the building, hanging out, talking to them, making sure everything's whatever, my last question is, what do you need from me to do your job? What do you need from me to get what you need to get done? That's how that's the executive approach that is, at least in theory, what Lee says he is, which is not practicing, but is that it's, as a school board, what do you need? Here you go. We're over here. We're not trying to manage what you're doing. We're just trying to make sure you have what you need to do what you're doing.
Are you asking as a legislator? Are you saying they should be asking us that, or are you posing that to me?
Yes, and yes. I guess the point is that would be the leadership style that makes sense to me, is that if we're going to have a centralized authority on how the schools work and stuff like that, it should be more of a, how can we help you achieve the goal? How can we come together as a goal? But how can we help you achieve the goal for your school system, because your school system is different than this one, and I'm not going to try to tell you to do what I'm telling this one to do because they're different. That should be the leadership style, is I would imagine would make more sense to get a better result for everybody.
I agree.
Even in my super greedy economic model that says we get smarter kids that get better jobs, that get paid more, that spend more money in taxes, so the government makes more money too. Yay!
Well, I agree on that leadership style, and in the grand scheme of things, it would be that we do have some legislators who ask that. We do put out a list of legislative priorities so that they know what things we need. Some of our legislators look at that and go, yeah, no. Because what they've set up as their narrative for their voters is, I'm going to go out here and make everything better because I'm going to tell these schools what they're going to do. And that's where they feel like their voters are coming from.
I think that I could get behind the idea that there are some voters that want that, in the sense that my school district sucks, so I want a legislator that's going to tell my school district how to get better.
But it would be so much better if they were working with that district.
Right, and they're not paying attention to the fact that, well, these other school districts are perfectly happy with what's going on, so you and coming in and influence differently is changing it for everybody. Right. Okay, I get what you're saying. The narrative's bullshit. That's the important takeaway. I mean, that's just a general life lesson, everybody, on anything. The narrative is probably bullshit. And
that's how you can help me, is getting
just to keep saying bullshit. Bullshit.
No, not the word. Just that narrative it's just not realistic.
Well, and again, I think it's one of those things that we don't hold elected bodies to a standard either, because they'll probably what took me from having a good time just kind of screwing around as this podcast into really trying to figure out who the candidates are for all these different offices was the realization of how the board worked, the school board specifically worked, and how many people I've heard run on schools that have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And the idea that all these people get away with running on, school's important, we're going to help the schools, It's like, well, it's not your job, so you can say it all you want, but you're not going to do anything about it because you can't.
And if their opponent is running on the same thing, instead of calling them out on it.
Right. Well, no, and they're both idiots for either not knowing what their job is that they're running for, or they're really good liars and we're eating it up. Yeah. But the real problem is that nobody else is calling them out on it either.
And sometimes they just don't even know any better.
I think that's the scary part, is I think that more of them don't realize that that's not part of the job. They actually truly want to do something about it and didn't bother researching what the job is to to do anything about it. So, all right, I ranted and raved. Last call. Anything else?
I think that's it. I think we've done good.
Cool. That was fun. All right, outro music. Jennifer Owen, everybody. District 2. Damn it.
This many.
She cussed, so that it's fair game now. I'm going to cuss this whole outro. We are Almost Agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, you can get all the episodes that we do, as well as whatever favorite podcast provider that you like. We should be on there. If we're not, shoot me an email. I'll see if I can get on that podcast provider for you. While you're in these places, please like, share, review, friend, follow, subscribe, retweet, 5-star review, whatever it is. Help us out. Help us get the word out. We're going to start saying bullshit all the time. That's what I learned today. So bullshit. City races are on. We got a couple more days of early for the primary. almostagreement.com/city elections 21. It's my quick cheat sheet. KGIS links, counter election commission links, so you can figure out where you're actually allowed to vote, and if you're registered and that kind of stuff. If you're not registered, it's too late, so you suck. But we will continue on. I'll get some more board members in here. I got a couple more city people I'm trying to work in. So I don't know. We're gonna keep doing what we do and keep calling bullshit when we can.